Hello and welcome to Get Yourself Optimized. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, and it is my pleasure to have Leah Elias with us. Leah is a certified Enneagram coach and a recovering perfectionist. She loves helping people find the mental switches to flip in order to unlock real growth and sustained change. Leah coaches individuals, couples, and families, and she leads workshops for churches, businesses, and organizations interested in improving their relationships and team culture. Leah, it's so great to have you on the show.
Thanks so much, Stefan. I'm really glad to be here.
So I know that you are passionate about the Enneagram, and I think it's important for our listener to understand why you're so passionate about the Enneagram. What is it about the Enneagram that impacted your life so much that you are a big advocate and evangelist for the Enneagram now?
Sure. Well, as you said in my bio, I'm a recovering perfectionist, and um, my whole life I have really struggled with wanting high standards and trying to achieve high standards, but it was too high. It was hurting me. I was never happy. I was never satisfied. It was hurting my husband because I was nitpicking him, um, hurting all of my relationships, and I was praying one day and I said, God, I really need help here. I don't even know how to do this alone. I don't even know what can be done, but I need to be not like this anymore. And I felt him say in that moment, I was listening to a worship song, I'm going to see a victory. And I was like, oh my gosh, a victory over perfectionism? That would be so great. And then about 2 months later, my husband and I got into a huge fight. I hit complete rock bottom. And then I knew I was like, okay, I must really want it now. I really want to change. I was like ready to go. I don't want to be a perfectionist anymore. And just around that time, my church started offering a class on Enneagram and just learning about personalities, learning about how we're made, why we do the things that we do, and it unlocked everything. God really used it as a tool to help me understand what I was doing and why, and how I can do something better. It's been amazing.
Hmm. And so, what's happened in your marriage since then?
So we have both learned so much about ourselves and about each other. We have a shared language that now we can discuss. I'm a type 1, the perfectionist. He's a type 4, the romantic individualist. And they each come with their own superpowers and super weaknesses. So we've been able to kind of learn through this language like, oh, are you struggling with the type 4 issue of envy right now? Maybe that's why you're feeling bad. Or, oh, hey, it looks like your inner critic is really coming out, Leah. Do you want to like calm it down? Do you want to be acting that way? And we've been able to be partners in each other's growth. And I don't even recognize us from a month ago, from 6 months ago. Every day we're growing and different, and I'm just so excited by it.
Okay, so my wife, Orion, who you met,
Yes.
she tells me when I'm coaching her to stop it. Like, I don't need you coaching me. I don't need your diagnosis. Just listen. Can you just be present for 5 minutes?
Yeah.
So, how do you navigate that? If it sounds very diagnostic to say, well,
Oh,
you're a prototypical type 4 right now. What
yeah.
you're doing is totally, textbook. It doesn't feel very good on the receiving end. At least that's my experience in my marriage with Orion. So I'm curious to hear about that from your perspective.
Yeah, it's a great question. There are definitely times when, and especially at the beginning, when we just wanted to like, here's my problem, I need you to hear it. I don't want you to solve it because I want to solve it, or I don't know, I don't understand it enough yet. And so we've learned to say, hey, I've got a problem. Can you just hear me out? Can you pray for me? Whatever the thing is that is not diagnosing. But luckily, my husband really likes it. He really likes my ability to find kind of the problem in what he's describing and say, isn't it that? Isn't it the type 4 thing? And that like kind of releases him from shame or guilt about it and go, oh yeah, I am being a type 4. That is the issue. Okay. Now that I know what I'm doing, I know that the answer is to do what a healthy 4 would do in this situation. So I'm going to go look that up. I'm going to go do some journaling. And we've built this really intense trust that we both want to be better and we are both helping each other get better. And whenever we're concerned, we're like, oh, I don't know, you really poked one of my buttons. Can I trust you right now? We always go, I'm so sorry. Let's back it up. And we find a way to get back to really trusting moment. Sometimes we have to take a break. Sometimes we're like, let's come back to this in an hour when we're calmer. And that's been really great too.
So what are the dynamics between a type 1 and type 4?
Oh,
How does the type 1 and 4 relate in a good situation? Everyone's feeling great, everyone's happy, versus one person is stressed but not the other, or triggered, and maybe both are triggered or cranky. Maybe there's some sort of environmental factor that's putting a big stressor on everybody.
for
Uh,
sure.
yeah, let's go through some of that.
Okay, yeah. Um, at my best as a type 1, I am calm. I'm not agitated. I can think clearly. I can see the problems in whatever the situation is and offer thoughtful solutions that really have a chance of unlocking the problem or even solving it. When he's at his best, he is creative, he is thoughtful, he's considerate, he's um, in tune with his emotions, which is just a difficult thing in general for anyone to do. And especially, I think men in our society really struggle with that. So I'm really grateful that he is so strong in that area. And when we're working together, probably my favorite thing to do is just solve domestic problems. Like, we have a cat and I cannot figure out how to get his hair to stop sticking to my socks in the washing machine. And so like I'm like, okay, Mike, I need you to turn on your creative thing and our problem solving skills and work through this thing together. And we don't quite have a solution to the cat hair yet, but if anyone does, please email me. And
I
that
love how you're crowdsourcing to my listener
everybody's
base.
helpful. You never know who will have the solution. Another type 1 perhaps. When we're feeling stressed, it's usually that one of us has been triggered by our typical issue. So for me, it's feeling like I'm not doing a good enough job. Something inside me is saying, oh, you really didn't execute that well, or somebody's unhappy with you and you should feel bad. And so I get one of the ways that I react is I get extra critical, like as if I could solve it by being extra critical. So laundry isn't folded, the dishes haven't been done, the cat really needs some attention right now. Like all of these things, and they tend to come out to whoever's there, which is usually Mike. Um, when he's doing well in those moments, he's able to go, hey, looks like you're doing the inner critic thing. How can I help you kind of back down from this? And then I'm usually able to go, oh, that's so great. One thing that would really help right now is I can't stand that the dishes have been in the sink for so long. If you could take care of that, that would lift so much of the weight off of me that I would be able to come down from this. And so we work like that. When it's switched and he's triggered, it's usually by the type four's core fear of like um, everybody has something that he doesn't make, like a feeling of envy, like he's missing something that other people have, and so he starts to feel really bad about himself. And he'll comment, maybe it's something he saw on Twitter, maybe it's something somebody said to him that he's misinterpreting. And if I'm in a good place, then I can say, hey, this sounds like a type 4, this sounds like that core fear. What do you need right now in this moment to come down off of that? And that's been really helpful. When we're both triggered, when we're both in a bad mood, one of us one of us either has to be the strong one in the moment, or we have to go like take a break. Maybe I need to go for a walk, maybe he wants to go play guitar, maybe one of us just needs to sit and talk to God and ask, what is my problem? I need to feel my feelings and move on from them because I don't want to hurt my marriage. I don't want to spew vitriol like I used to. I want to give out love. So if we can work it out together in that moment, we will. And if we can't, we take a break and we come back to it later.
So why doesn't everybody use the Enneagram to uh, help build their marriage? If they go to counselors and they get therapy and so forth, couples therapy, I imagine that Enneagram isn't the first thing that a therapist will whip out to help um, stabilize the situation.
Right. I think that kind of like I was saying at the beginning, I wanted to change, but I didn't want to change. Like I didn't want to do the work yet. And when I hit rock bottom, I said, I want to do the work. Whatever it's going to take, it needs to be better than this. So I think people have to really decide, I want to go on this journey. It's a little hard, it's a little painful, but once you get through the initial things, it actually becomes really addicting. You start to have like a laundry list of, I don't want to say like flaws, but like habits that you want to get out of, think reactions that you don't want to do anymore. And as you start to like work through them, understand why you do it, what does the Enneagram say? How can you be a healthier your type in this situation? Uh, it becomes addicting. It becomes easier and easier. And we're both at a place now where, a flaw pops up and we go, oh man, I can't believe I just did that. That is not one I have worked on lately. Let me add that to my list. And you help me keep an eye out for when that pops up. Lovingly tell me, hey, remember when you said you didn't want to do that thing anymore? It looks like you're doing it. What do you need right now?
Mhm.
Um, and my dream is for every couple to want to get to that point. I started coaching my cousin Emily and her new fiance Josh. They're getting married next year, and I offered them a coaching package because I saw how much Mike and I grew, and I really wanted them to have the same opportunity. We had our first session, and it was amazing. So what I recognized is they want to do something about it, and they realize that it can be better. I think people sometimes get stuck and go like, "This is just the best that it is," and I'm here to say, a couple months ago I was over there saying, "Yeah, I'm fine. It's really fine. Life is just hard," and now I'm over here saying, "It doesn't have to be this way. Let me show you how."
Right. So let's pick a quote unquote flaw
Mm,
for type one, and
mm-hmm.
let's say that it's avoiding or loathing criticism. I
Oh
think that's
yes,
one of the type one traits, right? So
yes,
let's walk through one, realizing that you're in that place of
yes,
trying to avoid criticism, and then because that's half the battle, right, is just
yeah.
recognition.
Recognizing.
And then
Yep.
the next step, of course, is addressing it, ameliorating that, so you're not negatively impacting whether it's your spouse or your colleagues at work or your kids, your parents, or whoever.
Yes. Yes, that was probably one of the first things that I had to work on, and um man, I really don't love criticism. I'm writing my first book right now, and I've sent it out to my closest friends and said, remember, I'm still a type one. I need you to deliver the feedback very warmly and lovingly while I practice receiving it without panicking.
Yeah,
Um,
criticism sandwich.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I used to really struggle with feedback, and I still do, but I was just telling myself this morning, I still struggle about 25%. Like if you're gonna tell me something's wrong, I'm gonna be like, oh, okay, all right, I want to fix it. But before I couldn't even hear. I couldn't even be in the same room. And I think that's because as a type one, I'm afraid of being wrong. I'm afraid that if you discover that I'm wrong, I lose value in general, in your eyes and the world's eyes. And so I was desperately trying to protect my value, my self worth by doing things perfectly so that I couldn't be criticized, or bullying whoever's criticizing me into accepting that whatever I'm doing is good and not wrong. And obviously, both of those are terrible ways to live. I was constantly stressed, constantly anxious. Nobody could tell me anything. I couldn't improve, except what happened naturally because I couldn't take feedback. And what really worked for me, and I'm writing this in my book, so it's top of mind. It just dawned on me one day, and I totally credit this to God, that I don't have to listen to the criticism. Sometimes it's going to be really useful and I can listen to it and act on it, and it doesn't change my self worth. And sometimes it's not useful. Sometimes the person just doesn't have the context of what I'm working on, or doesn't doesn't have the experience, and it's okay for me to listen politely, thank them, and then not make the change that they're suggesting. And just realizing that I have the option to say no made it so much easier to listen. I think I was afraid that I had to listen, that if somebody was criticizing me, I had to make the change. And so I was always like irritated by that and afraid of it. But when I realized that I can say no, it became so much easier to accept because now I'm not afraid of it. You're giving me criticism, I'm listening, I don't have to accept it, which opens up this space in my heart to say, wow, that is a good idea. I think I will apply that. And the more that I practice recognizing that I have an option, choosing yes or no to follow the criticism, it gets easier and easier, which is why I've been able to send my book draft to my friends. I almost wasn't able to send it, but I worked on that and said I don't have to accept the feedback, but I want this to be as good as possible. Here you go. So that's been
Mm,
really I've improved so many things since being able to accept people's feedback and criticism.
yeah. Well, that reminds me of a truism, something you probably have heard many times is only take on board what resonates and discard the rest,
Yeah, so
right?
good.
Which
Yeah.
makes total sense and very logical and practical. And I've heard it for years, but it
Mm,
took on a whole new meaning for me this year when I came to the realization that we're tested by God, given stuff that is by design wrong information by people we respect and trust, could be even spiritual or religious leaders who are super credible. And there's something that just doesn't sit right with us. It doesn't feel good in the heart, in our hearts. And it just like, it's not true. And since I've been receiving a lot more uh, information directly from God in the last year,
it's great.
I'm able to discern this stuff. And I understand now that this is by design, that we're not meant to just trust what somebody is telling us because of their authority position or because everything that they've taught in the past was correct or seemed to be correct. No, we're supposed to go inward into our heart and see if it resonates. And that's the test. That's the litmus test or the lie detector test to see if this is true or not. And it could be from, like I said, a spiritual leader. It could be from a family member. It could be from a book or any other source of information. It's not necessarily a source of truth, though. Even though we think it is, nothing is infallible. This is my understanding from receiving this guidance directly. This is by design so that we don't put anybody on a pedestal or any particular
Mm,
resource on a pedestal, that we work on fostering our relationship directly with God, because it's about conversations with God, not just asking for stuff. Prayer isn't just asking for all your wishes to come true. It's about listening as well and receiving information and guidance, and not just hearing crickets. So,
right.
what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I totally agree. Um, you were saying it's like a test. I've been realizing that every thing that comes along is an opportunity to practice not doing what I used to do, not reacting the way I used to do. Um, and so every opportunity that I have to receive feedback, I kind of remind myself I don't have to accept it. It might not be true. Let's listen for what's true. Let's listen for how it can help. And also generally um, accepting that most people mean well. Like even if their feedback isn't good or right or helpful, generally they mean well, except for some people on the internet, you know how they are. But um, when I really look at it, it just becomes easier to apply and easier to understand. And I think you're exactly right. It's a it's a it's like a mental exercise. It's like you're lifting weights. You're lifting your barbells in your mind to practice discerning this information at this moment. And for me, discerning the feedback, whether it's useful or not, and how I can apply it or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really good. So I'm curious to hear, how does it look for you bullying someone into agreeing with you that what you've done or what you've delivered is perfect?
Yes. Um, I in my last job, I worked as a chief of staff. So I was kind of like the right hand person to the CEO of this startup, and my role was to solve problems, and it was any problem basically that came up. I was to kind of figure out how to find the solution, implement it, and then work on it so that it stayed really well. So as you can imagine, there were a lot of opportunities for feedback because um, the CEO, is a type 3, the successful achiever. So he's an entirely different type. His desire is to succeed, his fear is of failing, and my desire is to be right, and my fear is to be wrong. So we ran into each other a lot with this when I would offer a solution that was decent. It was definitely not perfect. I don't always know what I'm doing, apparently. I would offer him a solution, didn't want to go back and start over again because that would make me feel like I was wrong, which I hate feeling. I would avoid that at any cost, really. So um I would just argue with him. I would tell him why he was wrong and why this is right and why he's dumb and why all of, anything that I could think of. We were friends, so we were able to like kind of talk to each other like that. And sometimes it works. Sometimes you'd be like, okay, let's try your idea. Sometimes it was fine. Sometimes it wasn't. The whole spectrum of things. But I I remember like in my mind in those bullying moments going like, I just need you to accept this and leave me alone because I cannot handle having to do this over because it'll feel like a failure, like I failed. I will feel terrible. So I was constantly protecting myself. Um, yeah, I'd say that's it. I was just trying to protect myself, and he was in the way sometimes.
Got it. Okay. So something that comes to mind that I've dealt with when outsourcing to India, it's a cultural phenomenon that I
Mm,
wasn't used to, and that was where I'd give an assignment and I would not get any negative feedback or questions or anything or any like concerns at all. They'd take the work assignment and then I wouldn't hear anything and I'd have to check in. And finally, they would respond after I made the proactive outreach and I'd ask, what's the status? Can I see what you've done so far? And if they didn't understand the problem or how to come about with the solution, they would keep banging their heads against the wall and would not produce the outcome,
mm.
but they wouldn't let me know. So
It's the
I
worst.
found this to be something that wasn't just with one particular um, person or company. It was every instance where I was outsourcing to India.
Mm.
And I found that very interesting that this seems to be cultural, but they don't want to admit that they don't have the answer, that they
Mm.
need uh, some help with clarifying the problem or the work assignment, or maybe they just aren't the right fit to do the work assignment. They won't admit it, and they'll just keep banging their head against the wall and not getting it done. And I'm curious to hear, is there an Enneagram type that fits that?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things to remember about the Enneagram is that um, it's all about one's motivations, not necessarily the behavior. So many Enneagram types can share the same behavior of like maybe procrastinating is the issue here, or not admitting that they need help. But it's not tied to just one Enneagram type. As a type one, I might be afraid of being wrong, so I might procrastinate. A type two might be afraid of disappointing you, so they might procrastinate. A three is afraid of failing, so they might not even start. Um, it's it's definitely all about the motivation. And so um, at least for coworkers that you're really interacting with every day, it's useful to learn their Enneagram type and find out what is the motivation behind the things that they do that uh, isn't helpful or we can improve a little bit. And then kind of like work with each other in that way, like, hey, I are you afraid, do you not have enough information, are you afraid of failing in this moment, because I just want you to know that I'm feeling XYZ, and like just have an honest conversation with them. I don't really know what to do about outsourcing to India, because I think the cultural addition to that makes it much more difficult. But
Mm.
um I also noticed that in China. I lived in China after college for a couple years, and a lot of the coworkers that I worked with in my various jobs did not want to tell me or whomever that they didn't have an answer, because they didn't want to get criticized, they didn't want to get ridiculed, so they would just avoid anything and hope that it went away. It was a little
Yeah,
hard to work with.
yeah. So there's a term for that, saving face,
Yes,
right?
saving face. Yes.
And I love the Indian culture. I had some really powerful experiences in India. Been there
Mm,
multiple times. Had spiritual awakening in India in
mm,
2012. So it's not. I hope it doesn't come across that I'm at all prejudiced. I, I
no.
I love Indians and I love India and I love the culture. And yeah. So, anyways, I think that's fascinating though to uh, uh, go behind the behavior, or under the underlying the behavior is a motivation, and that
Mm.
motivation can be unconscious.
Oh, yes, it's usually unconscious. That's why I think it's so important that everybody learn what their type is, so that they can begin to see what's motivating them, because that's really the first step. Why do I hate criticism so much? Oh, type ones are afraid of being wrong. Am I afraid of being? Yes, I'm afraid of being wrong. And then I can move forward with that. So important.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned China, and I'm curious to hear what were some of the things that shaped you the most
Mm.
from living 2 years or two or whatever years it was in
5 years,
China.
actually.
Okay, wow.
Yeah. Uh, it was it was kind of like a love-hate thing. I spent mm, a lot of my 20s there. So kind of after college, it was my first time really living on my own, and I was in a different country, and everything was difficult. Just because everything works a little bit differently than you expect. And also, as a 22-year-old, you don't really know how the world works. So everything that I was learning was how China works. And then when I came back to America, I had to kind of learn again how America works and different things. So that was a very interesting problem. I would say the thing, well, I've grown so much, but one thing that I really liked that I picked up in China was um, like I was saying, they are going to say no. Like a lot of the time, if you're interacting with like a a bank employee or like a security guard, somebody who's like not very in charge of something, and you ask them for help, they're probably going to tell you no, at least to a foreigner. I'm not sure about to other Chinese, but to me, they would often say no because they didn't want to give me the wrong answer and get in trouble higher up the chain. So, what I learned is there is a lot of room to push back and not take no for an answer. And it's, what do they need? What do I need? Where's the confusion? How can I work around this? And also kind of reading between the lines like, oh, I see, I can't walk here after 10 p.m. But if it's 1 a.m. and there's no one here, how about I just not make a big deal about it and just walk through the square or whatever it is. Um, learning learning to kind of push back on something that I need has helped me in China and in America get the thing done that I need and not just give up.
Hmm. But it's such a surveillance culture, and
Yeah.
well, not culture. It's more it's a surveillance state, and they try to um, uh, make it part of the culture that you're always being watched. So, you know, get used to
Yeah,
it.
it yes, this was probably about 10 years ago now that I'm thinking about it, in my early 20s when I was there. And China changes so, and I was in Beijing specifically. Beijing changes so rapidly that I can't even speak for what it's like right now. But 10 years ago there was this understanding that if you're a foreigner and you're not causing trouble and you're not explicitly breaking the rules, like you can get away with a lot and then kind of feign like, oh, I didn't understand, sorry. And it's not seen as rude. It's kind of, it's a way to save face. It's a way to go, I don't have to tell you you're doing the wrong thing. You don't have to feel bad about it. Just don't come here and do that again.
Mm. Did you ever have run-ins with the authorities?
Yeah, a little bit. Um, I was visiting Shanghai, and so Shanghai has many more foreigners than Beijing, and it's a different. This is so fascinating. It's like a different foreigner culture there. The foreigners who choose to live in Beijing are different from the foreigners who choose to live in Shanghai. And I was visiting Shanghai. I was visiting a friend. He had a scooter, and in Beijing, you can ride your scooter anywhere. At the time, it didn't have to be registered. It just couldn't go above a certain speed on the highway, which was fine. I wasn't going on the highway, but in Shanghai, there's so many more people, and there's so much more stuff happening that they have very strict laws about where scooters can drive, and it's very confusing. And so my friend, I was on the back of his scooter, and we were going somewhere. We got pulled over by a policeman who was, had to give him a ticket, which you pay right there. You just like put in your bank information, you pay the ticket right there. Um, but I felt bad for the guy. I felt bad for the policeman because he had to speak to us in English. We could have done it in Chinese, but he assumed we needed to speak English with him. So he was like really trying to convey, you cannot ride your scooter here. And as we've learned to do in China, you kind of push back a little bit and be like, oh, it's fine. It's not really an issue. This isn't a problem. And so my friend was trying to do that, and I was just gonna let him deal with it. And he's trying to put his scooter up on the sidewalk so that we're out of the street. And the policeman was worried that he was trying to escape. So he grabbed a hold of the scooter and said, "No escaping, no escaping." And I just remember going, "Oh my gosh, what's gonna happen?" Everything turned out fine. He was not escaping, paid the fine, and now we know you can't drive on that street. But sometimes it did get. Actually, I have a better story. I have a better story than that, if you don't mind. When Mike actually ended up moving to China with me, that's a whole story about how we met, but we were talking online. He really wanted to come out. He came to China, stayed there for about 6 months. This was the end of my 5 years, and I was ready to go home. So I had booked our tickets back to California because we were going to visit his family, and I booked his ticket under the name Mike and not Michael, like his passport said. And we were
Oh,
at the airport with all of our possessions, getting ready to fly. and we're like checking in and stuff at the front, and the very sweet employee was like, the name doesn't match. And I looked at it and went, oh my God, this was a clear example of I did the wrong thing. I messed this up. I was
Yes. Oh,
panicking.
that's a cardinal sin for a perfectionist.
I know. That's why I'm like still I'm like sweating just thinking about it. And we're standing there and I'm like, well, if I've learned anything in China, it's that this is not gonna hold me back. So I said, nope, it's fine. It's the same name. Sometimes we just go by that. It's not a big deal. You can just let him go. She looks at me and she looks at her computer. She goes over and talks to someone else. They're looking at the passport and looking at us. And I'm just trying to be really cool, like, whatever, it's taking so long. I can't believe you're putting me through this. And she comes back and says, okay, you can do it. And I was like, thanks, God. And so we calmly walk, we get on the plane, and I'm just like, oh my God, like, I didn't think they were going to let us leave. He actually ended up saving his boarding pass because he'll never, ever again have a boarding pass that says Mike on it. Because it always has to say Michael. So we saved it in a scrapbook.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, you can ask your angels to help you through that kind
Oh
of
man, I
situation,
was
right?
praying so hard.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, cool. So let's talk about the inner critic,
Okay.
because that inner critic certainly comes out, right? Like,
Yes,
oh my goodness,
often.
I'm sweating thinking about how I screwed up my
Yeah.
husband's name on the boarding pass or on the ticket, right?
Oh
So,
man.
what is it about the inner critic that our listener needs to know about?
Mm,
So not just knowing information of how that inner critic works and so forth, but what do they do? What do they do with this
yes.
information so that their inner critic doesn't hold any power anymore?
Yes. So good. This has been a major thing that I've learned. And the understanding is that type ones have an inner critic. I think every type has some form of inner critic. For type ones, it's specifically loud and specifically mean. Um, and the most important thing I learned, I was doing a lot of Christian Enneagram devotional reading to learn about myself. What does God say? What does the Bible say? How can I make these changes? And one of them was so great. She explained that it's Elizabeth Bennett. You can find her on Amazon. She's got a devotional for every type. They're very good. And she was explaining that the inner critic is actually me. And okay, obviously, but it's a younger me who doesn't understand the context of the situation. So, for example, growing up as a type 1 perfectionist, I wanted to avoid criticism, I wanted to avoid punishment, discipline. Um, not because I'm naughty, but because I'm so good, I didn't want any punishment at all. So, when I would make a mistake and receive a punishment, I would internalize it and go, okay, definitely don't ever do that again. Don't ever run out into the street again. I never run out into the street again. And so now I've built up many, many rules for conducting myself in life to avoid punishment and criticism. But and my younger self holds me to that because she wants to protect me. She wants to protect me from getting in trouble because she knows we hate that. But I don't always listen to her because she's a little much. So she gets louder and louder and meaner until I acquiesce, until I go, okay, I won't do the thing, or I'll do the thing. I'll do my homework tonight so that I can, whatever the good thing to do is. And just realizing that she doesn't know everything, just like learning to accept feedback. She doesn't know everything and isn't actually the best policeman of my behavior. And what I can do is I don't have to listen to her. I can say, hey, you know what? That rule doesn't apply anymore because now that we're adults, we can eat Cocoa Puffs for dinner if we really want to. Maybe it won't make us feel good, but if we really want to, we can. It's okay. And so I can say, that rule doesn't apply anymore. Here's why. Or I can train her to be nicer to me. So I'm thinking of an example. I um, I do like the groceries and the cooking in our family, and if I don't plan a dinner well, or like it fails, or I've wasted money and time and effort and now we have to go buy something because I messed up, my inner critic wants me to not do that again because she knows I don't want to waste food, time, money, etc. So she goes, oh, you're so stupid, why did you do that, why didn't you think that through, why didn't you plan for that? And I feel terrible in that moment. I have been training her when she pops up with her very helpful suggestions to say, hey, you're right. We hate when that happens. We hate when we waste money and time and food. And it was an accident. There was no way we could have known that the oven was turned up too high. Like we would not have known. Whatever the issue was, it was an accident. Accidents and mistakes don't lower our self-worth. This is okay. And if you're still worried, let's go ask Mike. Hey, Mike, I totally messed up dinner. Should we get tacos? He would love to get some tacos. He's not going to care. So, realizing that she doesn't know everything and I can train her has been monumental in lowering my anxiety and stress. She was a main cause. I call her she because she's me. She's a younger me. I call her inner critic. She's younger Leah. She looks like me and she's always shaking her finger at me. And the more that I've trained her, the more she's quieted down. And she only pops up uh, when she thinks I'm gonna mess up, and then I talk her down from it, or I listen to her. It's been so great.
So she's your friend.
She's like a friend of me, you know?
A
Like
friend of
I
mine.
love her. I wanna help her. She's been very helpful to me. She's like, if you think of her like a young child who is only trying to do their best, but they don't know how to be nice about it. And you go, hey, I recognize that you're trying to be nice. Let me show you a nicer way to do this so that I listen to you and everybody's happy.
Mm. So you said her name is Inner Critic?
I just named her, yeah. They're I follow Beth and Jeff McCord's Enneagram curriculum, and they've recently come out with kind of like if you've heard of internal family systems, it's kind of like that. But I don't know much about it, so I won't comment on it other than we have different parts of us in us, and they're kind of from different parts of our life, different times, different experiences. And when we name them and acknowledge them and listen to them like you would a crying child, it becomes much easier to deal with the feelings that they're evoking. So it wasn't very like clever. I just named her inner critic because that's who she is when she comes up. But we have a couple other names for a couple other Mike's parts, my parts that kind of pop up in a moment and go, pay attention to me, everything's horrible. And we go, oh, hey, welcome back. What's the issue today? Let's talk it through. And just kind of taking a couple minutes each time that we feel something rise up to acknowledge them, know who they are in us, and say, what do you need right now? How can I help you?
Mm. So it's like you're their parent.
Yeah, and I don't even have any kids yet, but I'm really excited to see how that turns out. Is it similar? I hope so.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, speaking of parenting and children and so forth, when you were young, I did some reading on your blog, and I
Oh,
understand that you had panic attacks
yes.
when you were
Ugh.
going to the dentist.
Yes, that was recent actually. My whole life, but yeah, the panic attacks were recent.
So let's
Yeah.
talk about that.
Okay.
What is a panic attack for those who don't have them and aren't really familiar with them? And how did you address that difficult situation?
So good. So there, and I'm not very well versed in panic attacks other than how I experience them. For me, they're usually a complete loss of emotional control because of fear. Something is scary, something is bad, something is happening. I can't control it. and I lose myself. So I start hyperventilating, crying, can't regulate myself, I can't calm down. Luckily, I have not had like massive panic attacks. They've been relatively manageable. They're not pleasant. I don't I haven't had any in a long time now because of the work that I've been doing. I'm very grateful about that. But specifically for the dentist, apparently some people just have softer teeth than other people. They're just more prone to cavities. And I didn't know this, and I have soft teeth, so I had cavities every time that I went to the dentist as a kid. My parents were tired of paying for it. They thought I wasn't taking care of my teeth. I wasn't really, but I was a kid. I mean, I'm not a professional dentist here. Um, and so it was always shameful because once again, I was bad. I had done something wrong. I was costing my parents money, and that's bad. So every time I hated going to the dentist. And we're such responsible people. We always went to the dentist twice a year. And uh, so just dentist in general was kind of painful for me besides the physical pain. I just hated going. And this is just this I know that this happened, so I know that the situation I'm about to explain happened so that I could work on this. I have been stressed in my life, so I grind my teeth at night. I'm hoping that will go away as I kind of release some more stress. But I was using a big bulky night guard every night. It's terrible. And the dentist who gave it to me said, make sure you just brush it with your toothbrush and toothpaste every morning, keep it clean. You don't need to soak it in the stuff, just do that. But he didn't tell me anything more than that. And so I went, okay, rules. I'm a type 1. I love rules. I will do this perfectly fine. It was very durable. I didn't think I ever needed to replace it. Yes, you need to replace them regularly and don't brush them with your toothbrush. It creates little cracks in it that bacteria get in and then sit against your teeth every night.
Oh no.
So I was so diligent that I was killing my teeth by just trying to follow the rules. And I woke up from a nap one Friday afternoon. It's always a Friday, right? With a raging toothache, and I have never had one of those before. So I'm Googling, I have some ice on my face, and I'm like Googling, what do I do with a toothache? I was able to get in to see an emergency dentist the next day. I was super grateful. I had to have a root canal and a crown. And then I said, wow, I have no idea. I went to my regular dentist about 5 months ago. I'm shocked that it became this bad in 5 months. Maybe we can do an x-ray and see if there's anything else going on. I had 5 more cavities. I needed a root canal and 5 cavities filled. And I was just horrified. Um, the pain, the expense, definitely have to pay for it myself now. Uh, the embarrassment, the shame, all of these things were rising up, and I lost it. I lost it in the dentist chair. I was afraid I was gonna be in trouble. Like, I'm 33. Maybe I was afraid my parents were gonna like, oh, you should have taken care of your teeth. And actually, I needed Mike to come in and hold my hand so that they could do the shot so that they could start working on the root canal. It was awful. And then I had to go back 6 more times over about 2 months. So I had 7 dentist visits in 2 months to fix all of these problems. And leading up to the second and third visit, I was like, I can't have a panic attack every time. Like, I can't live like this. I'm sweating all week long, waiting for my appointment. I'm anxious all day. I can't work. Um, I need to do something about this. So I started thinking about what what am I afraid of? I'm having a panic attack. I'm panicking about something. What is it? And I had kind of a conversation with my inner self. Now, this isn't necessarily my inner critic. I call this one inner me. It's a little bit different. They're not always the same. Sometimes they're the same. It doesn't really matter. But I was having a conversation with myself. What am I afraid of? And she said, dentists are scary and bad. And I, like a child, bad and scary. And so I said, okay, all right, what's scary? We're afraid of the pain, and we're afraid that if we have to have work done at the dentist, it means we've done something bad. So I said, okay, we have 2 things here, pain and shame. And so I kind of worked through each thing with myself, and I said, well, why are we ashamed? That one seemed like the easier thing to tackle. Well, because we've done something bad. Well, honestly, we really followed the rules. Nobody ever updated us on rules about mouth guards. There's really no way you could have known unless you were researching this regularly, which is not top of my mind. I have many other things top of my mind, not mouth guard hygiene. So I was able to kind of talk her down and say, we don't actually have to feel shame about this. It's really disappointing and annoying that we have to do this, but we don't have to feel shame about it. Okay, so then, but it feels painful. Pain means we've done something bad. No, I was talking with myself. This kind of pain is actually a health benefit. It is unpleasant, but it is a luxury service that I am lucky to be able to pay for to not have to deal with worse pain later. So, yes, it's painful, but it doesn't mean bad. And we can always ask them for more like numbing gel. They don't have any problem with that, and they don't want me to cry or panic. So like I can tell them what I need and they will respond to that. And I felt this weight lift off of me, like the clouds opened and I went, so if pain isn't bad and we don't have to feel shame, it's not really pain anymore. It's just sensations that are unpleasant in my mouth that I don't like, and they will numb me against them. And if it gets too much, I can ask for more. So when I was, and that worked so well when I was in the dentist chair every other time after that, maybe he'd push a little too hard or something, and I'd feel the sensation rear up and I would want to panic. And I said, take a deep breath. This is just a sensation. Just feel the sensation. This is okay. And I'd breathe through it. And it really, really worked. And now I'm noticing that like if I hurt myself, if I burn myself while I'm cooking or something, I don't, I try to not immediately feel shame like, oh, you messed up, you burned yourself. I go, sensation. And I let the sensation waft through and I acknowledge that it's unpleasant and it will pass.
Mhm.
And that's been really helpful.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, good job with that. So it sounds like
Oh, thanks.
you've defeated a lie that you used to believe.
Yes, yes. The lie that if I am in pain, it's because I am bad. I must have done something wrong, otherwise I wouldn't be in pain.
Yeah.
And that's not true. Sometimes things just happen and they're painful.
Right. Pain is a gift. Pain's a gift. It gives you feedback so that you can course correct. If you didn't have pain, if we as humans didn't have pain, we'd all be dead.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It definitely keeps me safe.
Yeah, yeah. So you have a process for defeating these lies?
Yes, I I love this so much. When I so one of the big things that I've learned through this whole journey is that I am constantly believing a lot of lies that I've told myself, or maybe the world has told me, or Satan has told me, whatever, whoever the culprit is, I'm believing lies that I don't have to believe anymore. And what I do in those moments is I try to when something's rising up in me, usually like my throat's tightening because I'm anxious or my stomach is churning, I go, oh, something's wrong. What am I feeling wrong here? And I ask inner me that same kind of question. What's the issue here? What are you afraid of? What are we trying to prevent? And then I follow that dialogue, that conversation. And if I already know the truth, like mistakes don't lower my self worth, then I'll remind myself, hey, mistakes don't lower my self worth. This is okay. We can check with whomever if they're upset. And I work through them like that. And if I don't already know the truth, then I don't really know how to explain this other than I just know that I'm missing something. So I see it as kind of like identifying the lie. This is the issue. I don't know what the answer is, but this is the issue. And I name it. This is the permanence issue again. This is the permanence issue popping up. We think everything is permanent. It's really hard to plan when you think everything bad is permanent. And then I ask my husband to help me in those moments. If he sees me overreacting about something, to kind of go against his mental checklist and ask, are you feeling like this is permanent? Are you thinking this is a permanent change right now? Do you like, what do you need right now? And helping me recognize, I recognize those moments, he recognizes those moments, helps me kind of paint a picture in my mind of all the different places that this lie pops up and kind of the different forms that it takes, because it's not always exactly the same thing. And then God eventually tells me the truth that I need to know, and then I apply it over and over. Every time it pops up, I go, ah, the permanence issue. Okay, I see that you're feeling concerned that the car battery died last night and you'll never be able to drive the car again. This is forever. No, it's not. It's just a temporary problem. Let's call the guy, get the thing in. By this afternoon, you'll be able to drive the car. And just talking through those things, again, it's like exercising my mind. I'm lifting weights in every opportunity where this permanence issue pops up. And every time that I see, oh, it wasn't permanent, everything's eventually fine, that makes it easier and easier. So that when another thing pops up, I don't immediately go, oh no, it's permanent. I say, I bet this isn't permanent. And I'm still a work in progress. And I'm always surprised at the different ways that different lies pop up. But the trick is to identify them, name them, look out for them, and then tell yourself the truth over and over until uh, until it's less of an issue.
Hmm. That's great. It's really, really good, and gives gives our listener some concrete actions to take. Um,
I hope so.
I know that you had experienced imposter syndrome, so I'm
Yes.
curious how that process, your 3-step process, how that um, can
Yeah.
address imposter syndrome, because I'm sure there are some listeners who have that or
Yes.
experience it, and I've experienced it myself, where I felt like I'm a fraud and I'm going to get found out, that
Yeah.
I'm not as qualified as or as worthy as some people see me as, and this is all a sham. So
Yeah. I hope nobody finds me out.
yeah.
Yeah. It's another lie, and it's one that most people experience at least once, probably every day, some people. And I still deal with this sometimes. But I treat it like a lie. I say, I understand where my imposter syndrome is coming from. I don't want anyone to think I'm wrong. Who am I to be talking on a podcast about how to defeat lies? Well, I have had some experience and it's helped, and I hope it helps other people. So I kind of wrangle it like a lasso. I say, this is the thing. What what am I concerned is happening here? I won't have any value if they find out that I don't have a PhD in psychology, or whatever the thing is.
Mm.
And then I tell myself the truth that I have in the moment. I work through it, and the more that I work through it, the more I realize um, it's it's not actually a bigger issue than any of the other lies that I've defeated. Maybe it's got a bigger hold on me, so I have to put more effort into it, or it pops up in more ways than others. So it might be more complex than some other lies, but it's just a lie. And I would recommend that whoever's dealing with imposter syndrome, look into your Enneagram type. There's a many free tests, or you can schedule a consultation with a coach like me, and I can help you figure out what type you are so that you understand what your motivations are. And then the next time you feel imposter syndrome pop up, ask yourself, is it because of this core fear or this core desire that I have? And see what you say, and then see if you can tell yourself a truth. This is also a type of cognitive behavioral therapy. You have a negative thought, you replace it with a positive thought, and let the negative thought go away. That's been my go-to method.
Mm, that's great. So you've mentioned God a number of times in this episode. How does your faith play into your Enneagram coaching practice?
Mm,
How does it help your clients get the outcomes they're after?
yeah, so good. So I I'm willing and able to speak in a non-religious way with anyone who would prefer that, or in a spiritual Christ-centered way for anyone who would prefer that. So usually when I'm working with like business teams, I keep it non-religious. But if I'm working with an individual who is a Christian and feels comfortable talking about God, then I use Beth McCord's materials to, and she's a Christian. She's gospel-centered Enneagram for personal growth, and I used her resources that explain how God created us to be these different types, and He is aware of our weaknesses, and He's aware of the strengths He's given us, and He wants us to train. He wants us to grow in those things. We're all Olympians in the making, mental Olympians in the making. We just have to practice our superpower. Um, that's one of the ways to recognize that, yes, I have a desire to be perfect and make things right, so I'm constantly bombarded by all the things that are wrong in the world, but that doesn't mean I'm bad. That's just my superpower, and I need to learn how to train it to focus on the things that matter. Use perfectionism as a tool. Use whatever your super weakness is as a tool for good in specific things and not everything. Um, that's one really good way. And then another good way is to understand that we all have a core longing. I long to be told, Leah, you are good. You are doing a great job. Like, I'm just saying that to myself. I'm like, oh, I'm so happy. And the key thing is to remember that Jesus died on the cross for us to fulfill those core longings that we have, in so that we're not alone. He his work on the cross imparts his righteousness to me, so that even when I make a mistake, God isn't up there going, "Oh, Leah, you made a mistake." He looks at me, he sees I'm covered by Jesus, and goes, "All right, let's try again. I'm not going to condemn you for that." Uh, so understanding your type, what your longing is, and how Jesus fulfills that for you is extremely relieving. And I would recommend anybody who wants to look into that, send me a message.
Awesome. And how does God uh, reflect the best of the 9 types of the
Mm,
Enneagram?
that is my favorite question. I understand the Enneagram as being divinely inspired. There's questions about its origin. I'm going to take a class on it because I'm very interested. But I understand it as the 9 personality types of the Enneagram symbol. God is the perfect version of all of them. He's made us in His image. So we show a little bit of Him to the world. So for me, I'm the type 1, the perfectionist. I long to see things good and right. I want to make wrong things right. When He made the world, He said, that's good. And I know that exact feeling. I've made a wonderful dinner. That's good. I feel so good about that. And I'm able to show God's desire for goodness and rightness through my own desire. When I'm overdoing it and nitpicking everything and critical, that's not helping anyone see God. So that's why it's important to learn how to uh, use it like a tool. um, for type 2s, the giver, they're very generous. God is very generous, God. 3s are the achievers. They have a drive and a motivation to lift people up with them, to encourage and motivate for a goal. The 4s are creative and emotional and understand beauty in things that the rest of us overlook. So they represent how God is an artist and has made the sky and the flowers and the lizards crawling on the wall, why they're so beautiful. So 4s help us remember that. 5s love wisdom and knowledge. They represent how God is wise and loves to give out and impart knowledge. 6s are loyal and faithful. God will never leave you. He is loyal and faithful. 7s are the adventurer, the enthusiast. They have a desire for fun and spontaneity that other numbers just don't have as much. And so they remind us that God is fun. He's not just a curmudgeon up there. He wants us to live an abundant life. Type 8s are the protector. They they can make anything happen and they will bring you under their wing, and they are very strong, very protective. God is our protector. Nines are the peacemakers, and they are able to see all sides of a situation, and they are able to then mediate the situation for the people in their lives. God is a peacemaker. He wants peace, he desires peace. He's given every person on earth a personality type with a core longing, a desire to do this part of him and offer that to the world. And when we do that in alignment with him, it's phenomenal.
Hmm. Wonderful. Well, I know you offer Enneagram coaching services, and if our listener wants to work with you in that regard, how do they find you? And I think you're going to be offering a special offer for these folks.
Yes. So you can email me at Leah, Leah, at enneagram.studio, enneagram.studio. Or you can go to enneagram.studio as the website and find me there. So we'll talk through whatever you need, and I am able to offer 20% off if you message me or contact me somehow that you heard me on Stephan's podcast. I'll give you 20% off any of the services, including the big ones, the workshops, the team retreats, whatever the thing is. I just really want to get this information out there to you. It's life changing.
Very generous of you. And I hope all of our listeners will take advantage of this great opportunity to work with you and have their lives and businesses and families changed over this. Yeah.
I hope so.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Leah. Thank you, listener. Make it a fantastic week and get out there and do something good for the world and for others. And we'll catch you on the next episode. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.